So I just want to shoot another video about the flooding potential in the Loxley Valley. So I'm now up at Stacey Bank, so the water treatment works is down there, and Dam Flask is just up there, and there's Dam Flask overflow. Several months ago there were proposals to build extra dams in many of Sheffield's western valleys, Loxley, Rivlin, the Upper Don, and mainly the Porter, I think, and possibly the Sheaf as well. Can't remember exactly. And that plan seems to have gone a little bit quiet, and I think certain aspects of it have been withdrawn, and quite rightly so, because certainly as far as the Upper Don, the Loxley and the Rivlin is concerned, we already have the facility there to alleviate flooding. So at the moment Dam Flask is nowhere near full. It's been a dry winter so far, but obviously when that's overflowing there, and especially if the exit channels that are on all the time, which are behind those trees, I don't know what you call them, just outlets for the reservoir. There's only one that's open at the moment, just to keep the river flowing. Obviously if you have a lot of rain like you did in 2007, the water's going to be flowing over there at some pace, and possibly both of those outlets are going to be open as well, and so the river levels rise. But it was pointed out to various dignitaries in Sheffield who were wanting to build these extra dams in the valleys and the various valleys, and really destroy the beauty of the place, is that we already have the facility to regulate the water flow from the reservoirs that are already here. So for example, these reservoirs are on the western side of the city. You have to understand the geography of Sheffield. The rivers, the waters fall from the Peak District in the west of the city and down into the city centre. Everything goes into the Don, the River Don, and then it flows out into the east end of Sheffield, and that's the main area that flooded, and out at Catcliffe into Rotherham, etc. So that's the main area that flooded in 2007. Now it just so happens that the worst of our weather, the wettest of our weather, comes from the west as well. So what that means is that when it's forecast, and we have good long range forecasts now, certainly 5, 6, 7 days ahead, if it's forecast that a deep low pressure system is coming in off the Atlantic and is going to hit the country, and there's going to be an immense amount of rainfall, or several weather patterns are lining up in the Atlantic and they're all going to bring in a lot of rain over several days, maybe even several weeks, what you have the opportunity of doing here is actually reducing the levels of the reservoir, so that the rain that falls further upstream into the peaks actually fills this reservoir first before it floods further down into the city. And this can happen here, it can happen over in Rivlin with the Rivlin and Redmires reservoirs, it can happen in the Uden Valley, with, I think it's Broomhall, is it Broomhall and Morehall reservoirs, and then up at Underbank and Langsett for the Upper Don Valley. The levels in all of these reservoirs can be lowered over 2, 3, 4, 5 days in expectation of that rain coming in. And you only actually need to reduce the level of the reservoirs by about a metre or so. And if you reduce it by a metre, maybe 2 metres for every reservoir in the city, that basically you would need a stupendous amount of rain over a short period of time to fill that level up to the point where we have another disaster like 2007. In fact, I can't see it happening, but what that requires is it requires it requires joined up thinking. It requires the Met Office to be good and accurate with their weather, and it requires Yorkshire Water to then respond, and it requires legislation, either locally or nationally, to make sure that actually happens for the benefit of everybody. And when you think that the water levels you would imagine are computerized, I would imagine that these outlets can be open or shut at the flick of a switch. I don't see any great expense in doing that. It seems to be a reasonable, logical thing to do to provide flood protection for the city. It should have been done before 2007. I don't know if it's being done now, but it certainly needs to be done. So the combination of having this reservoir, and there are 3 more further up the valley, Agden, Dale Dyke and Strines, having the levels in those reservoirs managed depending on the weather patterns that are coming in over several days and maybe several weeks from the Atlantic, combined with the widening of the river and the extra kind of floodplain habitat, ponds, etc., wetland area that I'm proposing down there, should make the chance of major flooding like what happened in 2007 never happen again. And obviously God agrees with me, because he's just made the sun come out to confirm my thoughts on this. So from a beautiful Loxley Valley, just under Danflass Reservoir at Stacey Bank, I'll say goodbye. Bye for now.